Welcome to week one of this 12-week live stream series. Today marks the beginning of a structured public journey through the developmental architecture of Quantum Educational Evolutionary University canon. For many years, this work has been evolving quietly through early symbolic manuscripts, through refinement, through critique, through scientific engagement, and through the long discipline of shaping a coherent developmental framework. What I will present over the next 12 to 13 weeks is a result of that long arc of work. I'm David Little, Swami Monamurti Saraswati, and this series is not an event, it is a sequence. Each week builds on the last. Each lecture forms part of a larger developmental structure. And in June, this entire series will stand as a complete manuscript, documenting the canon in its mature form. Today, we begin with clarity, with grounded language, and with a commitment to presenting this material in a way that is accessible, structured, and academically coherent. There is no mysticism here, no supernatural framing, only the work itself, standing on its own merit. Thank you for being here for week one, and let us begin. Now I'm going to read through the actual preface from the manuscript that I'll be publishing at the end of this course. So it's a preface by the founding chancellor of Quantum Education Evolutionary University. This manuscript marks the formal unveiling of the foundational architecture of the Quantum Education Evolutionary University. It represents the first complete articulation of a system that has taken shape across decades of practice, years of research, and lifetimes of inner work. These 12 or 13 lectures were delivered not as isolated teachings, but as a single unfolding, a coherent transmission of a canon that has waited for its moment to enter the world. QEEU was founded on a simple but profound recognition. Human consciousness is evolving, and this evolution is neither accidental nor mysterious. It follows structure, it follows law, it follows mechanisms that can be mapped, taught, and practiced, and verified. The canon presented in these pages is the first comprehensive attempt to articulate that structure in a unified, academically coherent, lineage-aligned form. This work stands at the intersection of metaphysics, subtle body science, cognitive evolution, and dimensional architecture. It draws from ancient Kriya knowledge, modern consciousness research, direct experiential insight, and the transmissions of lineage that have guided practitioners for centuries. Yet it is not a repetition of the past, it is an evolutionary continuation, a new articulation for a new era. The Kriya Yuga is the age of inner acceleration. In this era, the subtle body becomes the primary instrument of evolution. The brain becomes a multidimensional interface, and the human being steps into the next developmental stage, Homo Lumina. The teachings contained in this manuscript describe the mechanisms of this transformation, the loosening of the dimensional knots, the emergence of astral causal cognition, the activation of oversoul identity, and the stabilization of higher states of awareness. These lectures also establish the identity of QEEU as an institution, a university, not merely a place of learning. It is a field, a coherent structure that holds knowledge, lineage, rhythm, and purpose. QEEU was created to protect and transmit the canon, to train the next generation of practitioners, and to anchor a global community capable of navigating the multidimensional landscape of the human future. This preface stands as a ceremonial threshold. Beyond this page lies the full architecture of the canon. 12, 13 weeks of transmission, each building upon the last, forming a single evolutionary map. It is my honour to present this work to you, not as a conclusion, but as the beginning of a new phase in humanity's unfolding. May these teachings serve you. May they clarify your path. May they articulate the deeper layers of your own knowing. And may they guide you towards the luminous potential that has always been your birthright. The founding Chancellor, Quantum Education Evolutionary University, QEEU, Advanced Astrophysics, AAP, and Kundalini Research Project, KRP. So they're the three bodies that I'm representing when I speak to you today. Now, before we get into actual week one, I'm going to read through my dedication page. This lecture series is dedicated to the foundational forces that shape the architecture of this canon and the evolution of QEEU itself, to the teachers, the mentors, and lineage holders whose clarity, discipline, and presence formed the early structure of this work, to the communities and the seekers who continue to walk this path with sincerity, curiosity, and courage, to the future students of QEEU for whom this architecture is being built, a living university, open to all, grounded in integrity, clarity, and evolutionary purpose, to the spirit of inquiry that has guided every step of this journey, and with deep gratitude to my parents who made me and to whose influence is woven into every part of this work, to my father, an electrical engineer and inventor, whose structural intelligence and systems thinking shaped the architecture of the AAP formulas and the canon itself. His way of seeing patterns, frameworks, and hidden mechanics lives in every model and every formula. To my mother, my first yoga teacher in 1968, who opened the inner world to me long before I even had language for it. She later became my first student in 1998 when I started teaching yoga professionally, and she read my earliest manuscripts on Kundalini and Kriya Yoga, even while in aged care, with love, pride, and recognition. Her presence is the emotional and spiritual root of this work. This canon is a fusion of their gifts, engineering and yoga, structure and spirit, clarity and compassion. The purpose of week one. Week one introduces the architecture of QEEU, its origins, its structure, and the principles that guide its evolution. It sets the tone for the entire series and establishes the clarity and the discipline that define this work. May this series serve as a clear beginning, a clear, steady foundation for the long arc ahead. This week marks the QEEU's first major public educational release. Each weekly lecture will be accompanied by a written document uploaded to academia.edu, forming a visible scholarly trail. The final manuscript, released in June, will consolidate the entire series into a structured educational text on QEEU's mission and academic identity. By June, this entire series will stand as a complete manuscript, documenting the canon in its mature form. Today, we begin with clarity, with grounded language, and with commitment to presenting this material in a way that is accessible, structured, and academically coherent. There is no mysticism here. no supernatural framing, only the work itself standing on its own merit. Thank you for being here for week 1. Let us begin. Week 1, the architecture of QEEU. Opening. This is not simply the launch of a curriculum. It is the unveiling of a system that has been forming across years of research, decades of practice, and as I said, even lifetimes of inner work. QEEU stands at the intersection of metaphysics, psychology, subtle body science, and the emerging models of consciousness that define our era. And tonight in week 1, we begin with the foundation, the architecture of QEEU itself. 1. Why QEEU exists. QEEU was created to answer a simple but profound question. How does consciousness evolve? Not in theory, not in metaphor, but in structure, in mechanisms, in layers, in repeatable processes taught, practiced, and verified. Humanity is entering a period where the old boundaries between science, spirituality, and psychology are dissolving. We now have the language, the models, and the lived experience to articulate consciousness as a multidimensional phenomena. QEEU exists to map that territory. 2. The 3 pillars of QEEU. The architecture of QEEU rests on 3 foundational pillars. The canon, the written body of knowledge that defines the system, the identity, the lineage, the voice, and the institutional presence. The rhythm, the cadence of practice, learning, and integration. These 3 pillars form a living structure. The canon gives the content, the identity gives the authority, the rhythm gives the continuity. Together, they create a university that is not merely informational but transformational. The canon, a unified body of knowledge. The canon is the heart of QEEU. It includes the multiverse theory, the Kriya Yuga philosophy, the Homo Lumina thesis, the multidimensional brain model, advanced astrophysics, dimensional knot theory, and the guidance curriculum. These works form a coherent structure, a map of how consciousness moves, evolves, expands, and remembers. The canon is not a collection of ideas, it is a unified system. 4. The identity, the role of the founding chancellor. Every institution has a voice, a tone, a centre of gravity. In QEEU, the role of the founding chancellor is not symbolic, it is structural. The chancellor holds the coherence of the canon, the lineage alignment, the philosophical direction, the ceremonial presence, the articulation of the system to the world. This role anchors the institution. It ensures that QEEU remains unified, consistent, and true to its purpose. 5. The rhythm, why we teach weekly. QEEU unfolds in rhythm, 1 lecture per week, 12 weeks in total. This rhythm is intentional. It gives each teaching the weight of an event. It allows integration between sessions. It mirrors the cadence of traditional lineages. It builds momentum and continuity. It creates a living archive of the canon in spoken form. Rhythm is part of the architecture. It shapes how the knowledge enters the mind and how it settles into the subtle body. 6. The architecture of consciousness. QEEU is built on a simple truth. Consciousness is multidimensional. It operates across layers: physical, emotional, mental, intuitive, causal, and oversoul. Each layer has its own structure, its own laws, its own modes of perception. QEEU teaches how these layers interact, how they become bound, and how they become unbound. This is where the knot theory, the granthis, and the subtle body channels and the multidimensional brain all converge. 7. The purpose of this series. This series is designed to introduce the architecture of QEEU, establish the canon, prepare students for deeper study, articulate the evolutionary model, and lay the foundation for the January 1st institutional milestone. By the end of these weeks, you will understand how consciousness evolves, how dimensions interact, how the subtle body functions, how the mind expands, and how the QEEU system fits into the larger arc of human development. This is the beginning of a long-term educational and evolutionary project. 8. Standing at the gate. Tonight we stand at the gate of the canon. The next 11 or 12 weeks will take us deeper into metaphysics, psychology, subtle body science, lineage teachings, and the architecture of the multiverse. But week 1 is the threshold. It is the moment where the institution declares itself, where the canon begins to speak, where the architecture becomes visible. You are here at the beginning, at the foundation of something that will grow, evolve, and extend far beyond this moment. Closing. This is QEEU. This is the architecture. This is the beginning of the canon. Next week, we enter the first layer of the system, the Kriya Yuga philosophy, the metaphysical foundation of the entire evolutionary model. Thank you for being here at the start. Pranams. Namaste.